Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today I'd like to show you how I made this card. Once again, I have my brain turned to fall, passing more trees that are turning and some of that. And so I want to show you what I did to make this card. There's all different kinds of techniques that are used on here, and I'll just walk you through what it is I did. First of all, we need a piece of soft suede, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. Then I used 2 pieces of Cajun Craze. These are 4 by 5 1/4, and then I used 2 pieces of Very Vanilla, 3 3/4 by 5. Then I used a piece of our watercolor paper, and let me see, on the watercolor paper, that is comes in packages of 5 sheets, and they're measured 6 inches by 9 inches. And if you're like me, when I make up a card like this, I like to make up lots of extra leaves so that I have plenty to do what I think I need to do. So I'm going to fill up this whole card with the material we need to make the leaves for this project. So let's just get started, and I think I will start there. I'm going to start first with the watercoloring. The stamp sets I'm using this time, I'm using the Colorful Seasons stamp set, and I'm using this this leaf here, this little oak leaf from this set. Then I'm using Timeless Textures, and I'm using this background stamp. And then I liked the sentiment from Artistically Asian. Thanks for always being there for me. And so those are the 3 stamp sets I'm using. You certainly could keep it down to a fewer than that if you can find a way to do a background that also has a sentiment that you kind of like. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am using some re-inkers. So I'm going to move my card completely out of the way here so we have plenty of room for you all to follow along with what I'm doing. I have these little inkwell thing here, and I'm using the re-inker for Cajun Craze, and I'm really only going to put 1 or 2 drops of each color in my little well here. Then I am using, let's see, what else did I use? I used crushed curry, and I'm going to put crushed curry in here as well. And again, just 2 drops. This stuff goes a long way when you're watercoloring. Then I have Old Olive here, and I'm going to put some Old Olive up here on top. And then I have some of the soft suede, and in the soft suede I'm only going to put 1 drop in, because that's, I think, all I'm going to need. Now this technique is really kind of fun. I've done this before with a class. The card was quite different than the one we're making today. But what we're going to do, and I think you can see, in fact, I might put a couple of very large pieces of scratch paper down here. I think I'm going to open up a whole one and then put this one on top, because this can get a little on the messy side. Okay, so here we go with our our re-inkers. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my Stampin' Mister here to start getting my watercolor paper good and wet. And I'm putting, as you can see, quite a bit of water on here. Then I've also got my aqua painter here full, and I'm going to dab 3 or 4 drops of water in each of these ink wells. The other thing it's good to have handy is either a baby wipe or some paper towel so you can clean off your brush. So I'm going to start with the lightest of the colors that I've got out here, and that is the crushed curry. And I'm going to use my piercing tool here. And what I'm going to do is just make some very random marks with the yellow on here. And at the same time I'm applying this, I'm also squeezing the barrel, so I'm getting some additional water out on this. And I'm starting with my lightest color because I didn't want any real big dark blobs. And I want this to sort of run all over the card. Then I'm going to clean off my brush, and I'm going to go to the Cajun Craze, and the same thing, I'm going to push my water here, and you can see as it starts to move around the card how pretty that can be. And as long as you've got lots of water, you won't get big concentrations. You might get a spot or two, and that's fine because you want variations in the color as well. Oops, I got into the yellow again, didn't mean to. So back to the Cajun Craze here and getting that set at various places all over my watercolor paper here. And I think that's just so pretty. And I love the Cajun Craze color, particularly on water. Sometimes, as you can see in places here, it dried almost so light that it was almost pink. And so you could use something with a little bit more of a reddish tone to it to get some more distinctive color. I'm going to mop up around the edges of my paper here with a paper towel. And you can actually just put this on and pick up your paper and let it drip down the page. The effects that you get by doing all of these various things is just really very pretty. So now I'm going to clean off my brush here on my paper towel so that you can see you push a little bit of water through your barrel, and pretty soon it comes out clear. It doesn't matter if the nub is stained, it makes no difference. So now I'm going to go into the Old Olive, and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to push the water around here, and I'm going to just add it over principally some of the places where I have the yellow and a couple places where I don't have any color at all. But I think you can see this is a pretty decent sized piece of watercolor paper, and I used 2 drops in most of these and only 1 in the brown, and I've got plenty of ink. I could probably will go ahead and make up 4 or 5 of these. It's very addictive. Once you get started, you want to just keep going because they make such pretty leaves. And if you're like me, I'm kind of in the mood for fall looking kinds of things, and so I'm just going to add this green around in different places, and because some of it's over the orange, it comes out looking a little darker, and other places it's very light. Now I'm going to go back in because I wanted a little bit more of the Cajun Craze in here. And so I'm going to add a little bit more to various places in here. And just darken up that color in a couple of spots. Oops, didn't mean to get green. Do this. And see if I can't increase the intensity of some of this Cajun Craze in here. There, isn't that pretty? Okay, so now what I would do ordinarily is you can stop the ink from getting any darker by sopping it up. You saw I took some off of here. This I want to stay a little bit darker, and in fact that one I really didn't intend for it to come off quite so much. So what you can do is let this dry overnight. If you're like me, I haven't got the patience for that. I want to get going and do make my project. So you can also heat this with your heat tool and dry it. It actually dries fairly quickly. And to save a little time, I've got some pieces. Oh, I didn't add any of the brown. Maybe I will just add just a touch of the brown. Again, I'm going to use a lot of water because I don't want a lot of the brown. I don't want it heavily in here. Just touches here and there of a little bit of the brown. And you could see I could probably make with what I have left here at least one more panel and maybe two. So I'm going to just set this aside and let it dry. And I have made, and I'll show you several of the pieces that I've done ahead of time here, and I've already cut some of my leaves out of the process. The other piece of work that I want to show you was done. I don't know if you can see that on here. I'm going to put this back for a second. I'll bring this up to the camera, and I hope you can see the little bit of sparkle that is in those leaves. I think you're getting a glint of it. So I tried two different techniques, and one of them gave me the kind of just general sparkle that has, and then you can see the sparkle more in this one, because what I used was a gold Wink of Stella pen. There it is. And I did two different techniques. On this card, what I did was I used the gold Wink of Stella along this and just gave it little dash marks so that I got a little glint of the gold. And then depending on how big the leaf is that you cut out, you get more or less of the gold. The other thing you can do, and let's see, I'll bring this one back here and we'll just show you. And that is to just flick the gold, and I think you can see where it's splattering down here on your work, and you probably are getting way more than you think you are, because it doesn't look like much, but when it dries, it's also moving with the water, and you get these beautiful gold highlights on your paper. And in some cases it looks like fine mist, and in other places where we've got the bigger pieces of it, we get these larger dots, if you will. This is why I want lots of scratch paper on my work here, because this gets really messy. But it's just a way to get, and I'll show this to you before we're done. I think you can see some of the gold as it's starting to dry, but as this panel dries, by the time we get done with this card, we'll hurry the drying along if we need to, so you can see the effect of all of that pretty gold on there. So these were the two different effects I had. So I had some that had the dashes of gold in it, and I had some that just had the little sparkles. And what I did was I cut out using dies that I had, and what I did was I went into my stash of dies and I pulled out every conceivable shape of leaf that I could find. And I used some from the die set that matches the colorful seasons, and I used some from the die set. I'm not getting names here, but I'll put them down below. The dies that are from the Colorful Seasons, and the dies that are from the Layering Leaves. Is it Layering Leaves? Vintage Leaves is the stamp. It's the stamp set that matches the Vintage Leaves. And I had a bunch of different dies, and I just cut all kinds of leaves. So I cut a lot of these little ones. I cut some of these larger ones. I cut a couple of these that are in that Match the Colorful Seasons, that is just the outline. I cut big leaves and small leaves, and I don't even remember where this leaf is from, but again, just trying to get as many different ones out here as I could. And it's probably more than I need. Then, as I was working through this, I cut a couple of leaves using the framelits, these two framelits here, out of the copper, because I wanted some copper accents in this process. So now we have all of these pretty leaves that we've cut out, and I'm just going to set them aside over here because we won't need them immediately, but I want to get the dies back out of the way here. And the other thing I did, and I did this on the project that I put up the other day, is I did two things. And I saved a couple of these using pumpkin pie ink and soft suede and pear pizzazz. What I did on some of the leaves was to just, let me see if I get the right dauber here. There we go. Here's one that's got green on it. And just went around the outside edge of some of these leaves and just gave them a little bit of an edge. And depending on the leaf itself, like this one was mostly orange, so I wanted to add a little bit of green to it and then give this nice big green border around the edge of it here. And then I used my stylus from my scoreboard, and I added some of the vein details, and I think you can see that, to sort of help some of these leaves come more alive. So you can see I've put the veining in on some of these, on various different ones, and I even did it on the copper ones, and I really liked the way they came out. So let me move this out of the way because we won't need that for a minute yet either. But on any kind of surface on your Pierce mat, I've got a whole pad of these grid things down here, so it's pretty cushiony. And just drawing some vein detail into the leaves, I thought just added so much character to the leaves here. And I'll show this to you up close in a second. And you can just knock yourself out here, adding all kinds of things. But isn't that pretty? It just made the leaves, I think, come more alive. They look more real that way. So I've got all of those leaves there that have been prepared. And then we need to go to work on this piece. This is one of the white or cream colored panels, the Berry Vanilla panels. And what I've done is mounted my flourish from the Timeless Textures, and I'm going to use my soft suede ink, and I'm going to create a little bit of a background for this. And I think I need to stamp off once and then then you can stamp on here a couple different times. And I basically just wanted to cover this panel with this pattern and just give it a nice background. Some darker, some lighter. I just thought it would look way more interesting with a little bit of a pattern on it. And for this one, this is going to be for the inside of the card. And on the inside of the card on this one, what I did was I embossed a couple of the leaves here, and I didn't have my pattern stamp. And I thought it might look kind of nice to do the same thing on the inside here, up in this corner, where I'm going to layer those leaves a little bit later. So we'll just go ahead and do that while I've got that out. So there we go. We have a background on the interior of the card for the place we're going to do some embossing. And we have background for our layer here. So let's start putting this together. Start adding the various layers here. So I can fold, and if I had a bone folder, there it is. I could fold and burnish my edges here and get that nice and creased there so the card lays flat. And then this layer is going to be adhered to the Cajun Craze layer. So I think we can go ahead and just add that one. I'm so happy my box came in, so I have some of my Stampin' Up! Runner here. So there we go. And I'm going to layer this on here. Everything was cut down 1/4 of an inch so I could have a really nice border all the way around. I like the thin borders for some things, but part of the point behind putting a border is so that you can see the contrasting colors, I think. And so I really like having borders that I can see. So here we go with this, and before I do that though, I got myself in trouble with this before. I have a piece of this burlap ribbon that I need to cut to go around this, and I'm going to cut a strip of it, and then I'm going to add a little bit of snail on the underside, so on the ends for sure, because I want that to conform around the back of the card. And so it lays down, because this ribbon is very stiff. So I'm just going to put little dashes of snail along here. And the reason I'm not putting more is that on the card itself, you'll see that I tucked some of the leaves underneath the ribbon. And so I want to make sure that I have that opportunity. So now that I have these two pieces like this, and I know if we use this as our guide that I want my ribbon fairly close to the bottom here. I'd say right about there. And I'm going to press down to let that snail that I put on the top kind of grip everything, and then push this around to the back, and hopefully it's not straight. And hopefully you get this on straight. There, I think that's a little better. Okay. All right. So this is now ready to go on to our card base. So I'm going to add a little bit more snail to the top of the ribbon here to help keep it down. And I'm going to center this on the front of my card. There we go. Can already begin to understand what's going to come here. Okay, so the next thing I did was I used some more of that pretty copper ribbon that I used in one of my last videos, and you'll see I got kind of a zigzag pattern. It almost looks like seam binding in a zigzag pattern, and all I did was take the ends of the ribbon and pull. And so you can see there, and you can test. You can pull it again too to get a little bit more length out of what you've already done. But pulling this ribbon along here and getting just kind of a funky shape here is all I was really after, just to have something a little fun and different on it. And there we go. That's plenty. So I'm going to take my snips. Oh, there they are. Okay, take my snips and cut that piece off. And of course I've already attached this, so now I'm going to have to lift it up. And I want to attach this. Now I'm going to add some snail across here because I want this ribbon, I don't want it to slide back to its original shape. So you be smarter than me and get yours attached before you put your piece on your card. And just going to tack that down all along here and wrap this around the back. There we go. That is down now on the front of the card. And it's going to give us just a little bit of a different look, which if you know anything about me and watched my videos, I love different. I love doing things that are a little bit unexpected and unusual with materials. And so I think that's very pretty. Now, arranging the leaves. You know, on this, I sort of did a dry run on this, and I cut a lot of the stems way down on these leaves, only because I just didn't need them kind of sticking off the top. But if I follow kind of the pattern that I had with the first card, I did a couple of other things. You can see I started to do this. Then I took one of these leaves, and let me get a little piece of scratch paper back here. And I took my stamp, the leaf stamp, out of that Colorful Seasons. And I know I could have done this beforehand, but the beauty of the photopolymer stamps is, one of the beauties of them, is that you can see right through the stamp. So I've got a pretty good chance of being able to get this pretty well over the leaf. So I'm going to put some Versamark, plenty of Versamark on that, and I'm going to use my embossing buddy on my leaf here, and I'm going to stamp my Versamark on this leaf, getting this centered as much over the top of this as I can. And it actually lines up pretty much right over the leaf pattern. Now, I didn't want to do this to all of them, but I thought it would be interesting to have a little bit of the copper powder on a couple of the leaves. So I put my Versamark on that one, and then on this little leaf, and I'll cut off the stem on this one, or most of it here. What I did was I took the leaf and I kind of just dipped the edges of it, and I didn't use my embossing buddy on purpose. I just dipped the edges of this leaf into the Versamark because I thought it might be kind of fun to see if I could pick up the embossing powder around the edge of that. So let's do these two, and then I'll show you one other thing that I did. So I have my copper embossing powder here, and I'm going to put some embossing powder on this leaf. And there you can see I got the stamped image on that one. And on this one, what I did was, and it did just what I hoped it would do, it got the powder all around the edges, and you see on the inside how it's just kind of got a little bit of powder kind of all over. Ordinarily, that wouldn't make me very happy, and I'd be flicking it and using my brush to get it off. But in this case, what I wanted was a little bit of that powder kind of sparkling up the inside of that leaf. So what we're going to do is use the heat tool, and as normal, I'll quiet the video and be back in a flash here as I emboss these two pieces. Okay, so here we are. This one has the veins embossed on it now. I've got ink all over my hands. And this one, cute little leaf, has the veins in it, and now it has a little bit of the copper powder kind of around the edges and just sprinkled across the top of the leaf. Isn't that pretty? So the last one I did is this one. I really didn't like the way this looked colored. The Cajun Craze on this looks pink to me. And I don't know about you, but I don't see very many pink leaves. So what I did was I just dunked the whole thing and pressed it into the Versamark. And I thought it would be kind of fun to see what this would look like if it all got covered in copper powder and then got embossed. So there we go. I missed a spot. So I'm going to just add a little bit of embossing powder to that spot right there. Okay, I am so pleased with that. That is so much more interesting looking, in my opinion, than the colored leaves. I just think that came out great. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is kind of start putting this together. And so kind of following the pattern that I have there, I have the copper leaf tucked underneath so that it's muted a bit, but you still see the sparkle. And this big leaf kind of takes up kind of a nice amount of space. Then this one here, again, it picks up some of that shiny copper and maybe comes down over the ribbon a little bit. Then this one kind of tucked underneath here, again for some of that sparkle. I tucked this one at the top here to cover up my stems, and I took this other little copper one and kind of tucked it down here as a continuation of what was going on. And then one of these leaves here, kind of tucked in here to fill that in there. Now this one, on this card, I actually didn't attach that because I wasn't sure I liked it. So I was trying to decide for myself if I stuck that in there, what I thought about it. And maybe, because one time I stuck it behind with part of the leaf coming over, had the whole leaf behind, and I kind of like the way it frames this a little bit. So maybe I will keep it in there. And in that case, this one would come right across here and go over where our sentiment would be. So now that I know that that's roughly where I want them to go, I can take them out and add some adhesive to them and start putting them back in place. And I'm going to use Tombow for most of this. Okay, so there's this little copper one that I'm going to, well, maybe I'll tuck it right in here between the two ribbons. And if I do that, then I'm probably going to use one of the mini dimensionals to give the bottom piece of this a little support. So if I stick a mini dimensional right on the end of that one, there we go. That makes it look like it's a little bit more a part of the cluster. So if I take these off, then I can tell roughly where these need to go. Okay. And it's fine that some of them are, the ends are picking up, because I do want this to have a level of dimension. I don't want it to be completely flat, so that it's it looks like it has a little life to it. Now then, this one, on that card I put it up on a dimensional and it's almost too much. I wonder if I used a couple of stacked glue dots that I could get the dimension I'm looking for without a tremendous amount of height. So if I were to put a glue dot on this one and then put another glue dot right on top of it, it's not going to be flat, but it's not going to stick up a whole bunch. And I stick that right there at the top. There we go. I've got a little bit of dimension, but not too much. Oh, I think that cluster of leaves is just as pretty as it can be. Isn't that pretty? All right, now then, the other thing that I did with this was not an uncomplicated card. Sometimes I do the fast and beautifuls. This one is beautiful, but not terribly fast. What I did was I used our new label punch. When I did this one, what I did was I dipped the edges of this one in the copper and the Versamark in the copper, but it didn't really come out and it didn't show. So for this one, what I did was, so I punched a label out of the copper paper. Okay, so I took the die and cut out a label, actually cut out a couple of them. And then I'm going to clean up my stamp here first and get some Versamark on it. use my embossing buddy on my label here. And get this sentiment on here just as straight as I can. Okay, now let's get some of that copper embossing powder on this. There we go. It looks like I've got a little bit of stray powder here I need to sweep away. Okay, so now I'm going to heat emboss this sentiment. Right, then I am going to, hopefully that's a little dry here. Maybe while that's drying, I can add the couple of leaves to the inside of the card for my decoration there, and then I can emboss that as well. So I wanted to put one leaf right up here in the corner, and then have one kind of peeking in from the side here. Okay, let me get a little copper embossing powder on that as well. So there I have my 2 leaves. I'm happy with that. See if I have any stray powder. Emboss that as well. Oh, I think that's just very, very pretty. Okay, so now I'm thinking that this is dry enough that what I can do is just use, and I think I'll use Tombow as long as I've got it out, to put some Tombow on the back of this and center it on my little piece of copper here. Hold that down for a minute, and then I'm going to raise this up on dimensionals. There we go. Isn't that pretty? Now we've got this piece, and we have a layer of Cajun Craze that we cut to back this as a layering piece here. So I'm going to just use some snail here so that I can add this piece to the Cajun Craze. And then add that piece to the inside of the card. we go. I think that is just lovely. Now, I guess I really have to decide whether I want this additional piece, because I'd really want to tuck it underneath some of this to come up around and frame my sentiment here. I do kind of like the way that looks. I think I'm going to go ahead and add it. Take off a little bit of that stem and add a little bit of Tombow here. And I want to make sure I get some on this end so that we can stick it down underneath the sentiment. Note to self, next time, put this piece in place before you put this piece in place. Or don't put this down tight until you're ready at the end. Okay, so there they are. Let me just clear up a few things. Thanks so much for stopping by and watching my YouTube channel today. I do so much appreciate the support. I love hearing from you. I love getting the comments. It's really lots of fun to hear what people think and what they have to say about the various projects, including the, places where I could do a better job. I appreciate that. And I do listen to what you have to say, and I do try to make changes. Changed my camera configuration this time around to see if I can have better luck for making sure I get things into the, or staying on the camera surface here. So there's my, I'll have to tack this one down afterwards, but there's our project for today, and I think it's just a beautiful card. We've got this pretty copper ribbon down here. We have all of these gorgeous leaves. We did a little bit of watercoloring. As I look at this, I think it looks a little stark, and I wonder if a little bit of adding a little bit of the brown here just to darken it a little bit would make it look not quite so stark. There we go. I think that'll do it. So that is the project today. Again, thanks so much for stopping by and watching my YouTube channel today. Anything that you see here can be purchased on my website, www.lbettinger.stampinup.net. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator, and or you could join my team. I'd also love to have more people on my team. We have a wide variety of people on my team, and I give a lot of one-on-one time to my team members to make sure that they're getting out of this experience exactly what they hope to get out of it. In any case, I'll be back soon. Oh, let's see, the prize draw this time around is this punch, and this is the stamp set that goes with it. I just got my box, so I have a copy of it now. And this bundle is Merry Little Labels bundle, and this is the prize draw for the month of September. So if you place an order on my website, your name goes into the drawing to get this set at the end of the month. And anybody that puts an order of $25 or more gets a free gift from me, product gift or handmade gift. And so until next time, back with more cards and more projects. Bye.